Hello everyone on live stream as well, livestream.com King's Crusher. Okay, so there's a few of you on live stream, there's a few of you on the Chessbase server. Daniel King's still on air. I thought you were supposed to finish about 10 minutes ago. But I thought you were supposed to finish 10 minutes ago. Did I get this timing wrong? Oh no. I see. So he's still broadcasting now. Well, hi guys on live stream. Hi guys on should we start anyway? Oh right, he's closed now. Should we start this game? Did he check Ivanchuk games? I'm hoping he didn't. Did he check Ivanchuk games? All right, a few people are coming now on the Chessbase server. Right, okay. Evening all. Evening all. Oh, that's the calendar. Oops. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Okay. Yeah, I'm in reasonable spirits at the moment. Just had a banana, dark chocolate. Haven't had any serious rows with anyone. So hopefully I'm in a reasonably good mood, good humour. So I thought, yeah, okay. So yeah, I was checking. Okay, what's topical, because the over the board season hasn't started yet. I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, it should start in a few weeks now. Just a few weeks. Going to be the new over the board season. I'll be playing for 2 clubs in 3 different leagues. Maybe 3 clubs if I play for Drunken Knights. Never know. But that would mean playing quite a few nights every week. I don't know how exhausting that would be. But for the moment, I'm still looking at master games. So I'm just guessing really, but I like Ivanchuk sometimes, often actually. So I've done quite a few Ivanchuk videos already at YouTube.com King's Crusher. I'll just tell you that YouTube.com King's Crusher. There's loads of Ivanchuk videos already. You know, check them out. But let's do some more. Let's do this broadcast around Ivanchuk, because the other top seeds, they've been knocked out. So I believe. So he's, in terms of FIDE rating, he's the highest seed still in. So he was playing some Bunny, some Henry Robert Steele, 2-3-6-2. Sounds solid though, doesn't it? An opponent called Steele. You can't get more solid than Steele, can you? Huh? So let's see. Ivanchuk playing white plays c4. And knight f6. Knight c3. So is it going to go into a King's Indian? G6, yes. Fianchetto variation, yes. So white's going to fianchetto. So white's going to put pressure on d5. Everything's putting pressure on d5. It's a simple plan in the English opening. I remember Andrew Webster, who's an international master, telling me to play the English opening against Michael Adams when it was in his junior tournament, saying it's really simple to play the English opening. I think it's right. For the positional player, you know, it's not that complex. You just try and keep a grip on that major central square. I don't know how many of you have tried the English opening. What do you think about this idea? You're really just putting more and more grip on d5. So have you all explored this at some point? Yeah, this position. Now this is actually really exciting for the English opening player, because this isn't symmetrical English territory. Black hasn't played c5, and that can be really, you know, get dull at the moment without black committing that c pawn. You know, so it's more interesting than usual. Bishop g7. So bishop g2. So black hasn't committed any pawns yet. Hasn't committed the d pawn like usually it would go to d6 in the King's Indian. Hasn't committed anything after castles. Actually, white goes into King's Indian territory definitely. He commits the d pawn to d4. So not, you know, d3 could have been an option, or alternatively also e4 could have been an option for this kind of setup, but he's chosen d4. So King's Indian fianchetto transposition, d6. So we've definitely got a King's Indian fianchetto with knight bd7, which seems like a logical idea from black, just to be able to play for e5, and then maybe if ed, black will get some pressure on the e file later with that structural change. On the plus side for white, white will get pressure on the d file if this pawn's removed. So after castles, e5 is played, and so white doesn't mind just leaving the pawn to be taken. He plays e4. Black doesn't take on d4 yet. Black just plays c6. Okay, so we've got this kind of thing, and if you read Bronstein in his book, in some of his classic works, d6, is that an exploitable weakness? Very, very good question. For white trying to get hold of d6, it can be a problem. Black can generate lots of counterplay. So actually, white plays a very calm move here, still keeping this central tension going. Not minding ed. He just plays rook b1, and black just now decides actually to take on d4. Now, is it possible that black was discouraged with queen b6? That might be another alternative. I'm not sure totally, because maybe c5 and then d takes. So maybe black thought it was best just to take on d4 here. Okay, so should black resolve the central tension? Yes, this is live bishop hour. Yes. So should black resolve the central tension? a6 is the main line. John Asob says on live stream, a6 is the main line. Okay, e takes d4. It seems a reasonable idea. So knight takes d4. So what's happened? White's got now pressure on, potentially on that d6, and black's got pressure on e4. So which is the more exploitable weakness in your view? The d6 pawn or the e4 pawn? Well, we're going to find out. I think that's what the main discussion, that the logical discussion is in this game. But both sides have got that semi-open file. Black now exerts immediate pressure on e4 with rook e8. But the bishop's neat on g2, protecting e4 for the moment. However, black can play moves like knight c5 to further pressure e4, and then maybe queen e7. I once had a game against Neil MacDonald in this, and it was very unpleasant actually. A lot of pressure on e4. So how is this coped with? So white's trump card potentially is d6 maybe. But the downside is this e4 pressure. Okay, so h3 is played actually, believe it or not. h3. So knight c5. And one of the points I think is revealed here after rook e1, that there's no nuisance move like bishop g4 or knight g4. That h3 is probably quite useful, especially if Ivanchuk played it. Of course, we can be biased. So we've got enough protecting e4 at the moment. And black plays a5, so it looks a fairly standard looking King's Indian defence. With a5, b4 is discouraged, and also queen b6 might be useful to put pressure, on d4 indirectly, and maybe the queen side. So b3, it still looks fairly standard. Knight fd7. So the knight can maybe come to e5 at some point, or maybe somewhere else, but usually e5 at the right points. Bishop e3, and now it does actually come to e5. And now, black actually, it's interesting here. Okay, black's got access to d3 with both of these knights. Okay. Well, on b2 it'll be a target actually. Bishop Howard's mentioned is bishop b2. I think it might be a target. If black's going to get both knights eyeing d3, then knight d3 is going to target b2. I think on e3 it's got some other advantages, but here there's actually an interesting move played by Vasily. Rook e2. It's probably like a bit of prophylaxis actually, because now rook d2 will secure d4. Maybe d6 is going to be under fire with that neat move rook d2 coming up. So that looks kind of nice. But black tries to get some counterplay now, and it looks slightly risky, this move, f5, intuitively, to play f5. On the other hand, does it generate a little bit of counterplay? I mean, it weakens that diagonal, but so what in this position that the f-pawn's moved? Whoops. Does it matter that the f-pawn has moved? Well, Ivanchuk, he plays e takes f5. And after bishop f5, he's voluntarily giving up his light square bishop, black. And Ivanchuk snaps that off. And then here, okay. So white's got the advantage of the bishop pair. The pawn looks loose. This pawn looks a bit loose. What does white do though? White plays a strange looking rook move actually here. He plays actually just rook c2. Weird. Weird looking move. Rook c2. What is the idea of rook c2? Maybe... well, it's securing c3, of course, and maybe then an eviction, or bishop d4 and then f4. Okay, knight g6 is played. Okay, so maybe there's a threat of f4 at some point. Queen d2 securing f4, and maybe bishop h6 might be useful, as well as bishop d4. Queen f6. Okay. Now f4 is ruled out actually here. f4 is played by white to stop any f4s from black, if that was useful. So we've got a fixed potential weakness here. This is not really that weak, but this bishop, can it be given scope later? Can this bishop be as good as this one? This bishop's quite good on that diagonal. This knight's sort of quite good actually on c5. Now black actually plays knight h8, so that's a kind of interesting re-centralization actually, to sort of maybe come here and then protect d6. So rook e1, knight f7. So d6 maybe isn't such an issue now. Rook e2. What is this about? Rook e2. It means maybe queen e1 could be useful, I suppose. Bishop f2. And now a trade of rooks actually. And now king h2. So white's sitting comfortably, it seems, with the bishop pair. He's got e4 adequately protected against knight e4s for the moment. Now rook a8, as though a4 might be an idea. It's a complex position here. Rook c1 seems a bit of a waiting move, but also maybe just to try and, actually not more than a waiting move, try and get that e-file. Tying down the rook to c3, the knight moves, so maybe there's bishop d4 on the cards now. But queen b2, inviting an exchange with queens. Queen's evicted, or is it? It goes to b1 actually. But now knight d4, and I was shocked to hear, to see this concession by black, that this beautiful King's Indian bishop guarding these key squares is voluntarily given up here, and many people would say black deserves to lose here after giving up the beautiful King's Indian bishop, because black's really weakened his king considerably. Unless there's a massive advantage of this, this is a very kind of weakening move. Giving up one of the best pieces of the position. But I think the idea must be that the queen's kind of invaded over here, quite a pest, and black wants to reinforce control of e4 here. That must be the idea, and maybe some coordination as well with rook and queen. So rook e8. Okay. Bishop b2. Now, maybe if rook e1, there's rook c1 now to just trade off a rook. King f8 was played. But there's another idea now of bishop b2, the battery with the queen and bishop. Not here because the knight's on that. But queen c3 was played. And now bishop c1. Is this queen almost getting trapped here? Knight e4. The queen moves. Now queen a1. The queen can go back all the way soon. Or will bishop b2 play to stop that? It is played. Okay. Now here, if queen takes, then bishop g7 check would win the queen. So the queen goes somewhere else. Goes back to b1. The white queen now goes to e2. Very complex game. What's going on here? Okay. Okay, knight c5 attacking the queen. The queen moves, knight e4 again. And now Ivanchuk the side's had enough of this. He just takes on e4. And, okay, he hasn't got the bishop pair, but this bishop's looking very good on the diagonal. But black's got this potentially dangerous pawn here as well. Queen e2. Okay, so queen e2. What's going on here? After e3, is this pawn looking dangerous? Bishop d4. The bishop's evicted back, or pushed back. And now rook e4. Does black stand that badly after all this? It looks still complex. Rook b2, now queen c1. But now the queen is threatening to get into the game. Queen d3, threatening stuff. But it's not going anywhere still. Again, rook b1. But now the queen, okay, has to go back to a more awkward square. A3. Because if it took, sorry, there was no other square for the queen actually. So queen a3. Okay, f5. So really, we've got a situation where the queen's kind of stranded over here. This bishop is looking better than the knight, and this pawn's not looking so hot. If it's got a lot of responsibility for the rook. The rook gets pushed back, and now f6. And we're starting to seal a few squares away from the black king. King g8. And now the queen comes in for the attack. Queen f5. And this is looking really nasty now. This attack. All of a sudden. It seems to have gone completely wrong for black. So king h8. Queen d7, forcing basically rook f8. But now there's a killer move played, which just emphasizes the beautiful bishop on the diagonal. And I wonder if anyone on live stream can pick it up. I know you other guys, if you probably look at the move score, you can see it. The final move of the game was, well, one of the final moves. What was played now? So can you guys guess it? Oh, by the way, I'm on Chessbase. Welcome, Passiwitz, and I don't usually have an IM in my audience here. Hi there. If you want to say anything, sorry, I'll emphasise your comments. Being an international master, I'll emphasise your comments. I don't know what you want to say about this game, Passiwitz. It's an honour to have you here. If you want to say anything, I'll emphasise it. It seems to be a bit of a struggle, but now it's all over. So. This next move is crushing. Tactical move with the black queen stranded. Yeah, so queen takes d6. Wow. So after knight takes d6, that was actually played. We have f7 checkmate. Okay, f7 checkmate. Ouch. That was a complex game. I guess it's relevant if you're playing the white side of the fianchetto variation in the King's Indian. Is there an idea in this game worth nicking, worth stealing for your own games? Let's have a look, overview and summary at this game again. It was very complex, really. Not really a simple game to try and comment on. But really, what happened here? Black played for the classic e5. So white's trump card potentially is the pressure on the d file, but e4 is sometimes a liability. So h3, good prophylaxis move for black not using g4. e4 is secured. The knights come very prettily to e5 and c5, and Ivanchuk's response is just to play rook e2 here. Then black tries to play energetically with f5, but it does leave a slight weakness on the the f5 pawn, and it does lose the light squared bishop. Okay, no major problem for black here, I would say. It seems that's exploitable. But what happens very soon is a very committal move from black in giving up that dark square bishop. And I would say when black gives up that dark square bishop, unless there's a very strong reason, that could be fatal on the dark squares. Now this queen intrusion, I suppose, is a distinguishing feature of this game. This queen coming in and having to be kicked around a bit continually by Ivanchuk. So here it's kicked, and then knight d4. Okay, so the bishop is voluntarily, given up here. And this should spell disaster in a lot of cases. On the dark squares. But there's a lot of hassle for the black queen as well, though. So bishop e4 to try and stop black generating anything, and this pawn proved not to be that dangerous. And again, the queen was actually finally evicted to a really bad square, a3, and now white went on the attack very easily, it seemed, to crisply finish off the game with this queen takes d6. So that was the story of the game. I don't know. I don't really know if that was really an instructive game. That's how Ivanchuk got through the first round anyway. So let's have a look at another win in the World Cup of Ivanchuk. I don't know if any of you got anything from that game. It was quite complex. I hope you did. Maybe it emphasises about not giving up your dark square bishop too keenly. Okay. Let's look at another game then. So Ivanchuk black this time against someone nearer his rating, a 2700 player, so much nearer his rating, Emil Sutovsky. Okay. 2700 Emil, so he's not that bad. And Ivanchuk is black, so we'll flip the board, and it was e4, and very provocative play now by Vesely as black, playing g6, the modern opening, so encouraging white to set up the centre. White plays the Austrian attack with f4. So is black going to be able to undermine the centre, or is his king going to be in trouble? So knight f3, and after castle's actually e5, dislodging the knight. Now when this knight's dislodged, h7, the king might be more vulnerable. You can imagine a hack attack to try and get to the king. So knight fd7. Now who would play h4? Surely not a respectable 2700 player would play h4 here. Surely not. Well, actually h4 was played. This is probably theory anyway, h4, because it fits in with the position that you've kicked the knight from protecting h7. So to get the h file and to get the attack is fairly logical actually. But c5, the classic counter strike now is on d4 and e5. Try and blow up the centre here. So h5. So the centre's getting blown up. C takes d4, but hg just offering a whole piece, for the attack, and it's taken. The bait is taken. Is it a poisoned knight taking this knight on c3? So g takes f7, and now bishop c4 looks fairly nasty stuff. This pin, there's knight g5s. It looks vicious. So the calm move here, e6 was played. Okay, so now if bishop takes e6, we've got knight takes e5, haven't we? Because then if bishop takes, then you can play knight takes, and if knight takes, then you can play bishop takes. So I think that's the idea. But white now plays knight g5. Is this all theory? It's all theory still. Oh, Jonathan Bob, are you up on theory or something? Have you swallowed ECO or something? What theory is this? This is hack attack theory or something. Knight g5. Is this all hack attack theory? C takes b2. Wow. So that's taken. We've got another. These bishops are evilly pointing in the direction of white's king here, and we've got quite a few possibilities for attacking Ivanchuk, as these arrows demonstrate. So is the king in trouble in this position? What does Ivanchuk play here to get out of trouble? Well, he plays this check. Queen a5 check. Does that really change the picture of the position? The king moves now. Doesn't want to block in a bishop. Doesn't want to play queen d2 to exchange off queens. King just moves to e2. Okay. And now the calm move knight f8 is played. So at least at knight f8 it protects these two squares. Now knight takes f7. The king comes out a bit. Starting to creak now because of f5. There's a nasty pin on e6. Is the position starting to creak? Well, e5 can be taken with the bishop actually, even though that bishop's, we've got the queen as well to recapture. So e5 is taken. Now rook h5. So that might mean actually that queen h1 and rook takes h7, but also takes, and we've got pin this way on e5. There's a bit of pressure with rook h5. The king makes a run for it. King e8. After f takes e, we've got that pin over there. We've got other possibilities like this. Bishop takes e6. Bishop takes e6. Now a check again. So not the obvious recapture there, but maybe Ivanchuk wants this bishop to keep his bishop on e5. So queen d3 keeps his bishop on e5 now. And this knight's protecting that poor h7 pawn. So queen f5, but what about f7? Isn't that weak? Well, check. c4, check. And now, a very calm move in this position, knight c6. Because this check is not fatal because this knight is on d7 here, but it's played anyway. But the knight is loose here and it's taken. King c7. So materially, what is going on now? We've got rook, knight, bishop against two rooks and bishop. White is the exchange up. For what? Pawns are equal. White is the exchange up in this position. Queen takes a8. Now the exchange down, but the queen and rook are coordinated. Even though the queen's in corner, b7 is an issue. So things have got to move quickly for black here, not to get eliminated, wiped off the board. He plays this knight d4 check. Okay, and the white king seems to be in trouble now after all that. Why is the white king in trouble? So Ivanchuk's king escape plan seems to combine with it this counter-attack. Where is the king moving? It goes to g4. Now queen takes g2 check. The ball is in black's court all of a sudden. How did this happen? The ball is in black's court after white won that material. Check. 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 And winning material. So now he's only two exchanges down, but he's got all the checks on his side. And winning the rook now. He can just take the rook. So temporarily, he's guarded against b7. The queen's still stranded. And knight and bishop versus rook is good news. The king takes. Check. Check. And the king's had it here. Check. And white resigned. So that was an interesting game, I thought. Actually, when I first looked at this game, I thought actually it was quite amusing, to be honest. It shows that you've got to have a sense of humour, I think, when you play this opening as black. A good sense of humour for your king's safety is needed. Otherwise, why would you play this opening with black against the Austrian attack? So this is the most dangerous kind of attack system that can face your setup here with black. So the dreaded H pawn, which wins probably the most blitz games on the internet, is used here after e5. The dreaded H pawn attack with h4. So what have we learnt from the black side here? That you can strike back at the centre quite quickly. You can try and blow up the centre. You can try and win this knight on c3. Try and get your king like over here maybe over here. And then once you reach that destination, you can start checking the white king. Try and check the white king. So that's the basic kind of plan we seem to have got from this game. That requires a lot of courage. So c5, let's look at that again. So c takes, accepting the knight sack, accepting this kind of onslaught here. This e6 was quite a clever, neat trick to try and play knight takes e5. So knight g5, taking on b2 has the advantage, of providing the checks, the start of the checks. So check. Okay. So knight takes f7 was played here. Did someone say this was a blunder? Probably. I mean, maybe white missed the win in this game. I haven't really put it under engine scrutiny. But do you think white kind of must have missed the win here? He took on f7 and he played f5. It looks quite dangerous. The problem is, e5's dropping, and black ends up with a nice bishop on e5. So the king carries on its run. Now this was a neat, super neat trick, I thought. That bishop takes e6, not with the intention of getting the light square bishop, but with the intention of getting that guy from this check. That was neat because that leaves a nice bishop on e5. After takes, he plays check. So he leaves his beautiful bishop on e5. And maybe the worst was over here. I don't know what you guys think. But I think the worst was over. After this, losing that dark square bishop. So white he's lost the bishop pair. This invasion here doesn't seem that effective because f8's on it, which means knight c6 to d4 is going to be with check with the king on there, and there's also other checks like queen b5 when that queen goes like that. So here this isn't so clear that black's getting hacked, I think. So queen f5, check, check. And the knight finally develops. So it's coming to the centre with check, really, which is really quite good. And it's threatening actually to fork these guys. So the queen goes all in to win material. Winning knight, winning rook. Very soon, winning rook. But now the counter-attack blows white away. Check, 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 check. Takes... It's all pretty, long forcing stuff. And... white's forced to resign here. That was an exciting game, I thought. Very exciting. I don't know what you guys thought. So, okay. So let's look at another game. What would you guys think? That was quite exciting, yeah? Was that was quite good, I thought. So, let's look at another game. Again, Sutovsky playing white. I hope this is not a duplicate game. Don't tell me I've just loaded a duplicate. It looks like a different game, actually. Sorry, pardon me. Okay, sorry. So, black again against Sutovsky. He has to beat him a few times because he lost to him in one of the games. Okay, yeah, that was, yeah. So, okay, black again. He repeats the same opening. Sorry, e4, g6. But now Emil decides to play a little bit more conservatively in this game, actually. He plays d4 and knight c3, but now not f4, the Austrian attack. He plays actually bishop e3. Okay. So bishop e3 might have the idea, of queen d2 and castle queenside, and bishop h6. That might have that idea. c6, but a4, clamping down on b5. The knight goes to f6, and now maybe knight g4 might be a threat to menace that bishop. So h3 deprives black of using the g4 square. Okay, knight d7 looks logical. Black castles. a5. So this is more restraint on the queen side, for b5 en passant. Queen d2. So maybe white wants to exchange off these bishops pretty soon. Rook e8. And now bishop c4. which seems to set up a tactical target actually, bishop c4. Black wants to struggle, you know, for the centre, and this next move would seem very useful for black's, you know, battle for the centre. A temporary piece sack with knight takes e4, knocking out white's important e4 pawn. So here, knight takes e4, d5, getting the piece back. But what's happened in the centre after knight g5? Is he losing actually a pawn? Because this knight is actually forking e4 and f7. Is it actually also a pawn sack? But if knight takes e4, are we not going to have e5 and then pressure on d4? The rook casually moves back, so he's sacked a pawn as well. So what's happened here? It's a pawn sack. Is it? No, it's not a pawn sack, because black also won a pawn immediately when on knight takes e4. But the two centre pawns have been knocked out for sure. So we're equal on pawns. Okay, so knight f6. After knight takes, bishop takes. Okay, what's the situation here? What's the status in the centre? White's centre doesn't look as hot as before. I mean, also bishop f5 is now facilitated. No pawn on e4 means bishop f5, eyeing down on c2, and also rook d8 looks good, eyeing down on d4, and then maybe e5. You know, maybe there's going to be pressure on the centre. Okay, so h4. What is this h4 business? White doesn't care about the centre, it seems, in these games. Queen d6, now h5. So bishop e6, neutralising the effect of that bishop on diagonal, pinning down that f pawn, which could be useful. Hg, hg. Now, I do think this game is quite amusing, because white's made all this effort in this game for this h-file attack, and guess who owns the h-file pretty soon? Believe it or not, it'll be black hijacking that h-file pretty soon. So bishop e6, queen e6, and now white actually castles on the king side, because if he castles on the queen side, I think that's much worse, because queen a2, for example, is threatening mate in one. That's not too pleasant. So maybe he doesn't like that. He castles king side, but now king g7 is going to be possible soon, assuming there's no bishop h6, because then rook h8 and, you know, h-file. So you want to try and play for king g7 here. Black plays rook fd8 first, and, you know, there's pressure on d4, and maybe c5 is coming up. So queen b4. Okay, it eyes b7, but now look, king g7 is going to be possible soon. After rook fd1, it's played king g7. Get the rook to the h-file. What is white playing at? He's just given up the h-file, which he was the one who opened up that h-file. So we'd all celebrate, surely, by having this idea of rook h8. It looks a lot of fun for black now. But is white increasing the advantage in the centre with c4? You know, is d5 a menace? Rook h8, queen c5. So eyeing a7 as well, as maybe d5 coming up. Queen e4. Queen e4 is played. And now there's a threat, of course, queen h4, you know, mating. So d5. So queen h4 threatening mate in one. Okay. So white gives some space for his king. So f4. It gives f2 for his king. Check on h2. Because now there's a neat tactic here, which is played by Vasily. A neat tactic, exploiting the pin on g2. He plays actually rook h3, so he's got queen g3 now as a threat to win the bishop if white's not careful. Okay, so rook g1 is played here. Rook g1. Now black takes on d5. What is going on here? Why didn't white take now with c takes d? Is that a losing move? Possibly. It's dangerous because of check and you know, a deflection sack might leave the white king a bit bare. I'm not 100%. Well, yeah, queen takes g1. It looks unpleasant for white. So white actually, after c takes d, just played king f1. I think he admits he's worse with king f1. It looks pretty dire now after king f1. And now we have rook h5. That's a nice use of h4. Just pressure on that poor queen as well. So queen c8. Rook d6. It looks as though black's better. He's got all the chances, and you know, black can just play all sorts of things. You know, rook f5 is on the cards. So queen takes b7. Actually, rook e6 was played, just hitting the bishop now. Takes, protecting the bishop from afar. But now d4. d4. Because maybe, you know, he wants to be able to play queen takes f4 check if bishop takes d4, and we'll be winning that bishop on d4. So bishop d2, keeping an eye on f4. Queen g3. So there's a threat now of queen d3 check and bishop h4 check maybe. So rook a3 defending against that. Queen g4 now threatening queen e2 check. Rook f3. Queen f5 now threatening queen b1 check. Possibly. And again, you know, bishop h4 might be useful as well. g4, so queen b1 check is played. Now rook e2 check. Now queen e4 check. This is a match of checks. There's loads and loads of checks Ivanchuk seems to play and win with a string of checks. You know, white's king safety is again, you know, shot to pieces here. It's all running with great force. So bishop h4 check is used, and now you know king f1, queen f3 will be mating. So white has to offer the rook, but now just takes, and queen d3, and white actually resigns here. So again, somehow Ivanchuk has broken down white's king safety. So let's try and look at how that happened again in slow motion. Well, in overview and summary. How did white's king safety, you know, get shot to pieces here in this game? So a different variation against modern. So bishop e3. So the move c6. So white was trying to play positionally on the queen side to try and clamp down black's queen side counterplay. But what happened which was so bad? Well, I think one move which maybe is questionable for white's pretty formation in the center, it was disturbed actually by this bishop c4 move. It seems to be asking for knight takes e4. So white's center was slightly knocked out here, you could argue, with knight takes e4. Okay, so with the center slightly knocked out, it meant also, if you look at the resulting pawn structure, that black has an active game, you know, in this position, because black also now has this potential pressure on the d file because he's got rid of his d pawn as well. So d4 is a potential, you know, target. So after knight f6 takes, and white went crazy here. Bishop Hell saying, yeah, h4 is a huge blunder. White was crazy, surely. With white's positional play out on the queen side, why does white want to do this? Why? Strange. Maybe, you know, white should just castle. But white must know what he's doing. He's 2700. To have a 2700 FIDE rating, you must know what you're doing. Surely there's an idea behind it. It was just something that refuted it in black's play. Maybe a very masterful defense here is at work after h4. Maybe a lot of us would be blown away, but what does Ivanchuk do to neutralize the attack? Well, maybe he looks at this piece and says, this piece is dangerous. It's pinning my f-pawn, which means h5 is going to be more effective. So what does he do? He plays queen d6 to facilitate bishop e6 to neutralize, you know, that bishop. So h5, he plays bishop e6. So I think part of the problems are over for black. So HG, HG, this is a file potentially useful, this file, although it seems for white, but maybe for black later. Who's going to use that file later? It seems black, because where is white going to castle? After bishop e6, queen e6, it seems castling queen side's out of the question, so white ends up castling king side. So king g7 would be nice to play without bishop h6, and it seems with this pressure on d4 that white is encouraged not to play a move like c3, where c5 might be useful. He plays actually queen b4, which of course allows king g7 and the hijacking of the h file. So it seems what has happened here, from this slight knock in the center, black has now also hijacked the h file, and so white's operations now are going to be less effective, surely, with black having dangerous threats emerging on the h file. So even though white's got a potential strategic break in the center, you know, this h file is very dangerous. Yeah, and this queen over here doesn't inspire confidence for the king safety. The queen being on b4. So king g7, and it looks as though, you know, this is a standard, you know, hack attack. There's no knight on f3 even. The pawn's gone. White's king is not that safe. So c4, you know, potential strategic break, but it's not effectual, is it? If white's king is going to, you know, be massacred, then the strategic break d5 is not as effective. So queen c5, queen e4, with immediate like threats, queen h4 to h1. So d5 is played anyway. Okay, but it's positional play versus tactical or king play, isn't it, really? So d5, queen h4, threatening mate in 1. But the king's had it. It's just getting, you know, in trouble. The king's in trouble after rook h3. It distracts from all of white's operations. White can't go for like c6, you know, because the queen g3 will be winning the bishop. So rook g1, and white's really on the defensive now. I think he admits he's lost with this next move, king f1. It's an admission of defeat. I mean, king f1. Black's just grabbed the pawn, and now, you know, rook h5. It's all pretty miserable for white now. He can grab these queenside pawns. He will not have time to queen this pawn. His king's going to get mated here. So he takes that pawn anyway, d4, and his king's in just so much trouble now with all these checking squares available. So queen g4 threatening queen e2 mate. That's parried. Queen f5 threatening queen b1 and bishop h4. So check, 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 takes, bishop h4 check. The king's safety is just the dominant element here, and here white resigns. So I don't know, strange play from Emil in both games. I don't know if he was shell-shocked after the previous defeat in this variation, annoyed, tired. It seems a strange game to try and open up the h file to have it hijacked later. But anyway, so that was an exciting game though as well, I thought. Lots of checks and forcing moves on the counter-attack, the rebound. So let's have a look at another game. Okay, one final game. Okay. So as white, to really knock out Sutovsky, he wins again. Okay, so as white against Emil. Okay, as white, he plays knight f3. Let's flip the board. Emil plays knight f6. After c4, g6. Is it going to be King's Indian? Well, knight c3, d5 now. Not King's Indian, but some sort of neo Grunfeld, I think. So g3, and black takes on c3. So the situation here, it looks like a sort of Grunfeld, but is white's pawns as vulnerable? White doesn't have to commit to playing d4 necessarily, but he does anyway. After c5 he plays d4 anyway. Okay, pressure on d4, but not e3, bishop e3. Okay, so bishop e3 might carry with it queen d2 and bishop h6 at some point, or just rook d1. So cd. Interestingly, Ivanchuk plays knight takes d4. He doesn't mind this seemingly ugly looking c3 pawn. Knight takes d4. Puts immediate pressure on the diagonal. Maybe rook b1 is going to be annoying pressure on the diagonal. Black actually plays knight a5 here. It looks as though c4 is slightly vulnerable as well, to try and use that horrible bishop on e3 as well. Doesn't seem ideally placed. Queen d3 guarding c4. Now bishop d7. I think black can't be too miserable with the position here, can he? It looks okay for black, because the structure looks neater. Wouldn't you say? Black's pawn structure looks neater. The knight potentially is useful on c4. But what's this bishop doing on d7? So knight b3, knight c6, now knight c5, and there's definite pressure though on black's position. Knight e5, off, attacking the queen. The queen doesn't move though. Ivanchuk just plays knight takes b7, attacking the black queen. Queen c7. Okay. It's getting sharp all of a sudden, is it? Bishop f4, just pinning the knight to the queen. Bishop e6. Has white just nabbed the pawn out of nothing? He's just nabbed that pawn, that b7 pawn. Yes. White's just the pawn up. I don't know if that was forced, but this pawn looks a bit miserable, and c4 looks under black's control. Queen e3. Okay, queen e3. Rook a8. How does white try and defend the pressure here? Rook ab1. Doesn't mind losing c3 here. It's taken. He just gives up that c3 pawn. So what has he gained from this? He can gain the a pawn now if he wants, with queen takes a7, or can he? Queen a7 looks to be on, but he doesn't want to lose his a pawn, so he moves the a pawn first. So he's got still the threat of queen a7. Black ignores that threat, plays bishop g4, just counter-attacking on e2. White protects the e2 pawn. So is queen takes a7 on now again? Black ignores that. Complex game. Knight c4, just offering the a7 pawn. It's taken, and now bishop d4. So is there some problem here with f2? Queen a6. The queen's harassed a bit, goes to c6. Harassed again, goes to e4. Harassed again, takes on e7. Crazy. But he's also losing the exchange. He just went straight into a skewer there. So white's winning the exchange. So 2 pawns for the exchange. 4-5 against 3. But this outside pass pawn looks dangerous. Okay. Rook e8. Queen b4. Not minding queen's coming off. But also his e2 pawn. It's only a pawn for the exchange. Now, knight d6, not minding. Okay, he's attacking that rook as well as the knight. The knight attacks white's rook. The rook attacks black's bishop. So we've got 2 pieces en prise here. Complex. The bishop attacks the rook. Okay, complex. Threats and counter threats. Rook c7 now. So we've got still that threat, and we've got another threat now on f7. Check. Rook f8. But now the dreaded a pawn. a5. Okay, this pawn is really dangerous. A6, really dangerous. And the bishop's attacked, it's ignored. Well, D6 has been offered actually. Just A7, offering the bishop, because there's a tactical idea now. I think that if takes, then there'll be knight C8, and what would stop A8? Nothing. So black dare not take that bishop. He played actually bishop D4, which unfortunately interrupts the attack on D6, which means the bishop is now free to take on G5. It does take on G5. Bishop B6. But in this position, there's a nice move for white. Knight C8. So what does white do about this pawn threatening to queen? He's going to lose material. If he takes like this, there's knight takes A7. So actually here, after knight C8, black resigned. Strange game. Really complex game. Threats and counter threats. I mean, I don't know the calculations involved. If we do an overview and summary of this game, must be a lot of calculations involved for all these threats and counter threats in this game. Black was maybe intuitively trying to generate play. So the first strange decision I thought was knight takes D4, because I don't know how many of you would think of knight D4. It leaves ugly pawns, doesn't it? But there's pressure on the queen's side here as compensation. So knight A5 looks a little bit as though it's asking for trouble as well. Knight B3 is a nice move, because now if knight takes A takes, we've got nice pawns and we've got pressure on A7. Black doesn't want that. But knight C5 seems a menace here for D7 and B7. White nabs a pawn and seems to navigate this kind of minefield, not minding losing the exchange with his queen just to get out of the attacks. Queen E4, just putting himself on a skewer, because he's won 2 pawns, and even though black wins a pawn back, white doesn't mind playing the exchange down here, because basically the main trump card is this A pawn. So the exchange down for a pawn, and it's like threat after threat after threat here. But the situation now is the exchange down for a pawn. Just one pawn. Very important pawn, the A pawn. The A pawn has been winning a lot of Grandmaster games in this World Cup, believe it or not. You wouldn't have thought the A pawns are so dangerous, but I've seen loads of games recently with the A pawns going, winning games. It's just very difficult for black to do something about the A pawn here. So A5, A6, and the A pawn's making its way to the queening square, and all of a sudden there's a big threat of knight C8. So even if the bishop's munched, knight C8, bishop D4, and now the bishop can take on G5. Okay. Because if knight C8 here, then maybe takes and then takes. So white took on G5. After bishop B6, knight C8 still strong here. Knight C8. So anyway, okay. I hope you enjoyed that game as well. This is very complex games from Invenchuk. So I hope you got something out of them, and I'll upload this to YouTube if you want to review this brief analysis of these games. This video will be on YouTube fairly soon, in about an hour or two, if you want to check there and leave any comments on YouTube if you want as well after. So hope you enjoyed it, and leave any comments, and check it with engines if you want to post analysis. All right, so maybe I'll see some of you next week. Okay. Thanks very much.